For those of you who don't know, the BFI looks after what is probably the world's largest and most important collections of film and television. We have films going way back into the 19th century. In fact, we've got about 1,100 films that date to the time of Queen Victoria. We have the world's oldest surviving film that was shot in China. We have the world's oldest surviving film that was shot in India. And if you jump forward a few decades, if you look at the 1940s, just look at the kind of range of extraordinary original camera negatives we hold. We have those of some of the greatest films made in that decade. We have the original camera negatives of David Lean's Great Expectations. We have those of Powell and Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death. We have those of a number of the Ealing comedies, including my favorite of all of them, Kind Hearts and Coronets. But also we come right up to date, and wherever we can, we bring in copies of films into the archive before they even hit the cinema screens. So, for example, if you think of two of the hits of this festival so far, Suffragette by Sarah Gavron and Ben Wheatley's High Rise, well, those films are kind of safely preserved in the archive even before they were screened here. Film, as I'm sure you're aware, both in its analog and digital forms, is very fragile indeed, and it offers us kind of enormous challenges to look after it properly. And not the least of those is the expense of doing so. Restoring and preserving film is incredibly expensive. To give you just this kind of sense of that, the film you're going to watch this evening, Shooting Stars, that took 20 people 18 months to achieve, so you get a sense of where the investment is going. As a charity, and the BFI is a charity, we really do rely on people such as yourselves to enable us to achieve our ambitions, to care for the collection, and also to make it accessible again through restoration. And through this campaign for Film is Fragile, we're looking to raise £1 million. As the BFI's creative director, Heather Stewart, likes to say, no amount is too small or too large. And if you have that large amount that you would like to give away to the campaign, or indeed that small amount, please look at the leaflet you should have in your programs and donate online this evening. It will make an enormous difference. To make things a bit easier for you this evening, we'll have people collecting money at the end of the screening. And we're doing that specifically for what we hope will be our next restoration. It's not a big feature film. In fact, it's a short film that was made in 1938, and it was shot in Technicolor by the great Jack Cardiff. Jack Cardiff was one of the country's most fantastic cinematographers. He's famous particularly for the work he did with Powell and Pressburger. He won an Oscar for Black Narcissus. He also worked on Matter of Life and Death and The Red Shoes. Near the beginning of his career, he made a series of travelogues, mainly in India and the Middle East. And it's one of these films that we want to restore next. Not only does the film look sumptuous, or at least it will look sumptuous in Technicolor once we've restored it, but it's one of those films where you think, well, it feels pretty important at this moment too. This is a travelogue about the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra. So a city that's clearly being destroyed probably as we sit here at the moment, but at least we can restore and make the film available again. But it's fantastic to feel that a film that is 77 years old can have quite that amount of relevance. Like all the restoration projects we work on, this restoration of Shooting Stars, along with the commissioning of a fantastic new score and for it to be played for you live tonight, was only possible because of the generosity of a significant number of people. So I'd really like to thank Air Studios, the Arts Council England, the British Board of Film Classification, the GD Charitable Trust, the donors from the 2013 Luminous Gala, the Michael Marks Charitable Trust, John and Jennifer McLennan, the PRS for Music Foundation, and Betsy and Jack Ryan. Thank you very, very much indeed. We would not be here this evening without you. Thank you. The Film is Fragile short as well, I should say, which is pretty wonderful and kind of gets its message over fantastically, was also produced as something of a labor of love by The Mill and was supported by the Mohammed S. Farsi Foundation. And again, thank you very much indeed for your generosity. In the late 1920s, there were two young shooting stars of the British film industry who really kind of changed the look, feel, and ambition of British cinema. They were the young Alfred Hitchcock and the young Anthony Asquith. And I love the fact in this still from the set of Shooting Stars, you can just about spot Asquith himself. He is the chap on the right with his back towards you with the curly hair. We have, as I'm sure many of you know, already restored all of Hitchcock's 9 surviving silent films. They're currently still playing across the world, and since we restored them in 2012, they've now played at about 35 countries, from Cuba to Kazakhstan, to an audience of over 250,000 people in cinemas and in open-air screenings. And thank you very much to our partners, the British Council, for working with us and helping to achieve that. It's been fantastic to change that understanding. And now, having moved on from Hitchcock, finishing off the work of silent films restoration of Anthony Asquith, who again made 3 extraordinarily audacious films in the late 1920s. Shooting Stars is his first film, and it's one of those films you kind of can't, when I first saw it, I kind of couldn't believe this is a first-time filmmaker. Incredibly well constructed and full of moments that I think Hitchcock would have described as pure cinema. There's much debate as to the role Asquith played in the film, because it's in fact credited to A.V. Bramble. But what I found really interesting is we look after, among the many treasures in the archive, the original script written by Asquith for Shooting Stars. And what you get when you read that is a sense of how much of what we see on the screen, a cinematic invention, actually is there right in Asquith's script. The restoration of Shooting Stars, I have to say, was challenging, to say the least. The film had experienced quite a lot of wear, or not quite a lot, a great deal of wear and tear over the years. And as a result, for the restoration, we used 4 separate elements to achieve a look as good as we have managed. We nearly always start, if you possibly can, with the negative of film. And we did have the negative of Shooting Stars, or I should say we had a bit of the negative of Shooting Stars. We had reel 6, to be precise, which wasn't very good for working on the rest of the restoration. So we relied for the majority of the restoration on a film print that would have been shown in 1928, a nitrate film print. The film print had a great quality of the underlying image, but actually was kind of pretty scratched. It has mold damage, and there are also all kinds of missing frames in it. It felt very important to us that we didn't want missing frames in the restoration, so we had to look elsewhere at how we were going to find those missing frames. And what we relied upon was a fine grain, which is a preservation element that was created in 1948. And we also used a French version of the film that was released in the 1940s. So between those 4 elements, that is how we created this restoration. If you could roll the reel, please. Thank you. I'm just going to give you a sense now of some of the work that was undertaken by the team, so you can just get a sense of what it used to look like and how the film has been transformed. In the first shot, if you look on the left, you'll see a scan of that 1928 print, and on the right, there is the restoration. You'll notice there is a blizzard taking place on the left-hand side of the screen. And normally we'd try and remove that surface damage with traditional photochemical techniques, but this was a world where we could only work in digital to get rid of that. And the team developed a technique which automated some of the removal, but actually quite a lot of those horrible snowy dots had to be removed dot by dot, frame by frame, incredibly time-consuming, but you can see the transformation on the right. I'm going to show you an example now of what it's like when you get a missing print. And I said our desire was a missing frame. So it's absolutely about there, you've just had it there. You get that kind of horrible flash. Now, we could just join the ends of film together, but even though it's a fraction of a second, you'll still get a jump. What you're going to see now is where we've inserted that a frame from a different source. If you look carefully along the left-hand side, what you'll see in the moment is the tiny flash where the left-hand side changes, where it goes black, and that is the point at which we've inserted a new frame. There we go. And so hopefully, well, hopefully you'll see in a moment, when it's reinserted into the final restoration, you just won't notice at all. And here's the sequence played at the correct speed in the final restoration. Beautifully achieved, but that had to happen many times over. On the right, we have an example of what the film might have looked at if we'd had a negative for everything. This is the glorious final sixth reel of the film. But just look at the light in the glass, look at the light on the wall, and you get a sense of why negatives are so important if you're able to use them for a restoration. And here, just the detail in our leading lady's dress, the light on her hair as well, so much sharper. In a way, it kind of really underlines quite how fragile film is. The fact that just one reel of this negative is left to us. I have to say the team have done an extraordinary job in marrying all those different elements, so you don't feel that this is a jigsaw puzzle. This feels like a beautifully kind of thought through, graded film where you're not aware of those numerous elements when you watch the restoration. And I really would like to extend my thanks and congratulations to everybody at the BFI National Archive and Deluxe Restoration for their incredible work on this project. Well done, thank you. We now have a new restoration of Shooting Stars. We also have a new score for Shooting Stars. And it couldn't be more appropriate that we have, for Anthony Asquith's Shooting Stars, the man who won the Anthony Asquith Award for film composition not too many years ago, John Altman. So please we welcome John Altman and the Live Film Orchestra. Thank you.